welcome back to the channel. I'm Paul, and you might know me as the guy who spent more nights on the road than in his own bed. I've hauled everything from coast to coast, and I thought I'd seen it all, until I stumbled upon Jake's place. This wasn't just another abandoned stop on Route 66. This place, it was different. It was like the past was trapped there, whispering its secrets on the wind. Join me as I share a story that blurred the line between the living and the not-so-living. A story of a lost family, a ghostly encounter, and a night that changed my life forever. Buckle up, because this one's going to take you for a ride. This is the story of Jake's place. The hum of my truck's engine mixed with the rhythmic shuffle of wheels on the asphalt. The steady thump of the tires on the aged pavement was a lullaby after countless nights spent on the road. My name is Paul, and as a truck driver, I've seen my fair share of oddities rattling through the lonely stretches of Route 66. But nothing could have prepared me for the night I drifted into the paranormal. I had been hauling a hefty load of crates from Phoenix to Chicago, the mid-August heat pressing against my windshield like a forehead on a glass door. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I switched on the lights and cast a glance at my reflection in the rearview mirror. A beard scraggly from weeks on the road, eyes that had seen both beauty and sorrow, and an expression carved by solitude, a map of a life spent chasing the horizon. It was around midnight when I hit that desolate stretch near the New Mexico border. The stars twinkled mercilessly, each a distant reminder of what lay beyond this mundane world. A cold wind began to stir, a whispering gale that sent a shiver down my spine, as if the earth itself was sharing some ancient secret. With the radio tuned to classic rock, I cruised through the vast emptiness, reflecting on all the miles I'd covered, each one a chapter in my life. That's when I noticed the flickering light off in the distance. It was sporadic, almost like an old neon sign struggling to stay lit. Intrigued, I decided to pull off the road, thinking it might be a diner or a rest area, a welcome respite in the blackness. As I parked and turned off the engine, the world around me fell eerily silent. I stepped out, the gravel crunching beneath my boots, and headed toward the light. My heart beat steadily within me, a calm, measured thud. I was a man who understood the importance of caution but was also driven by an insatiable curiosity. The closer I got, the more it appeared to be an old truck stop, long abandoned but somehow still alive with faint illumination spilling from a rusty sign that read, Jake's Place, since 1957. As I approached, the hairs on my neck began to rise. The door swung open with a rusty creak, as if it hadn't been touched for ages. Inside, the air was thick with dust and memories. Tables were set as if waiting for families who would never arrive, and the jukebox in the corner, despite its long silence, was alive with the echo of a familiar tune that seemed to resonate with a hint of melancholy. The atmosphere was dense, a palpable heaviness that seemed to pull at me. I wandered further in, feeling drawn by the strange energy of the place. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw her, an ethereal figure clad in a faded blue dress, hair cascading around her shoulders like a waterfall of shadows. She stood by the jukebox, her translucent fingers lightly brushing against the surface. "Are you real?" I breathed, unsure if I were dreaming or awake. She turned slowly, revealing a face illuminated by a glow that was not of this world. "I've been waiting," she said, her voice soft like the rustling of leaves in a gentle breeze. "For someone to listen." My heart raced, yet I felt a strange sense of calm. "Listen to what?" "To the stories left behind," she said, glancing around the forlorn diner. "They linger in every corner, trapped by lingering memories." She stepped closer, and I could see sadness glimmering in her eyes. "And in the stories, your truths live too." I found myself drawn to her words. They echoed with truths I had faced during my journey, a reflection of my experiences on the road, the moments where hope battled despair. "What happened here?" I asked, gesturing to the diner, feeling a connection I couldn't explain. "An accident. Late one stormy night, a family, a mother, a father, and their little girl, stopped here to take shelter. They thought they'd be safe, but fate had different plans." Her gaze bore into me, awakening something long buried in my heart, the fragility of life. They were taken too soon, and their spirits are bound to these walls, waiting for someone to remember them. The shadows in the diner shifted, distorting the once familiar surroundings. A chill swept through the room as the jukebox crackled to life, spinning an old record that played a haunting melody. I felt the weight of her sorrow brush against me like a cold wind on a summer's night. "What can I do?" I asked, feeling the urgency in my chest. "How can I set them free?" "Remember their story," she implored, her form flickering like a dying candle. "Speak their names into the world. Give them a voice." I nodded, realization dawning. I was a storyteller, a vessel for the histories worn on the faces of the countless people I met during my travels. This was my responsibility. "Okay," I whispered, overcome with conviction. "I will tell their story." As I took a step back, the woman smiled, a serene, grateful look that filled her heart with light. "Thank you. It's all we've ever wanted." With that, she dissolved into light, and the diner felt warmer, as if the shackles of the past had begun to loosen. In that moment, I sensed a shift. The weight I had felt was replaced by a burgeoning hope. I knew then that I wasn't just a truck driver, I was a keeper of stories, stories not just of mine, but those of others who faded away too soon. The sun broke over the horizon as I climbed back into my truck. I glanced back at Jake's place, no longer an abandoned relic but a sacred space. I took off, the road unfurling in front of me like a canvas. I would tell of that family, of their love, their laughter, their loss, and in doing so, I hoped to keep their memory alive. As I drove away from Route 66, I felt lighter, an assurance coursing through me that I would carry their story wherever I went. And so, under the vast expanse of the sky, I became not just a trucker but a storyteller, weaving through the fabric of life and death, creating connections where they were once severed. And though darkness would continue to lurk at the edges of the world, I would always remember that even in the shadows, there is light waiting to break free, and stories yearning to be told.
What's up, everyone? Sam here, and I'm about to take you back to a summer road trip that started out as the ultimate adventure and ended up as the ultimate nightmare. We were four friends chasing the ghost of Route 66, looking for those classic Americana vibes. We found them, and a whole lot more. We thought we were just exploring an abandoned stretch of highway. We were so wrong. This is the story of a road that didn't want to be found, a darkness that lurked beneath the asphalt, and a growl that still echoes in my nightmares. Get ready, because this one's a wild ride into the heart of fear. This is the story of a growl from the asphalt. This is our story. The squeal of tires on sun-baked asphalt was the soundtrack of our summer. For friends, one beat-up Jeep Wrangler, and the endless ribbon of Route 66 stretching before us like a dare. There was Leo, the designated driver and resident skeptic. Maya, our amateur photographer armed with a vintage Polaroid. Chloe, the free spirit with a penchant for the occult. And me, Sam, the storyteller, always searching for a good yarn to spin. Route 66 was supposed to be iconic, a nostalgic trip through Americana. Gas station diners, quirky roadside attractions, and sunsets that painted the sky in fiery hues. And for the first few days, it was exactly that. We devoured greasy burgers, posed with giant fiberglass statues, and cranked up the classic rock until our throats were raw from singing along. Then we reached Seligman, Arizona. Seligman was off. Not in a charming, quirky way, but in a way that made the hairs on the back of my neck prickle. Most of the buildings looked abandoned, their windows like vacant eyes staring out at the empty street. The few people we saw moved with a slow, deliberate gait, their faces etched with an unsettling blankness. "Creepy," Maya murmured, snapping a picture of a dilapidated motel sign. "But in a photogenic way." Chloe, ever the enthusiast for the strange, was practically vibrating with excitement. "Guys, I read about Seligman. It's supposed to have a really strong energy. Some say it's built on an ancient burial ground." Leo predictably scoffed. "Yeah, and I'm the King of England. Come on, let's just grab some gas and get out of this ghost town." The gas station attendant, A man with eyes that seemed too small for his face stared at us as he pumped the gas. He didn't speak, just silently pointed at the register when he was done. I paid, a feeling of unease settling in my stomach. As we pulled back onto Route 66, the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long, eerie shadows that danced across the landscape. Leo, trying to lighten the mood, suggested we find a good spot to camp for the night. That's when we saw it. A sign, half hidden by overgrown weeds, pointing down a narrow, cracked road that branched off the main highway. The sign was old, weathered, and barely legible, but I could make out the words, "Old 66 do not enter." Underneath, someone had spray painted a single word, "Turn back." Chloe gasped. "Guys, this is it. This is the original Route 66 alignment. It was abandoned years ago because things started happening." "What kind of things?" I asked, intrigued despite myself. Chloe lowered her voice. "Accidents, disappearances, strange sightings. They say the road is cursed." Leo rolled his eyes. "Seriously? You're actually buying into this crap?" "I think it's interesting," Maya said, adjusting her camera. "Maybe we should check it out? Just for a little bit. We can get some cool pictures." I hesitated. A part of me screamed that this was a terrible idea, that we should just stick to the main road and forget we ever saw the sign. But the storyteller in me, the one always searching for a good story, was irresistibly drawn to the unknown. "Okay," I said, against my better judgment, "but just for a little while. And if things get too weird, we turn around, no questions asked." Leo grumbled, but he turned the Jeep onto the old road. The asphalt was cracked and broken, and weeds sprouted from every crevice. The air grew heavy, thick with an unnatural stillness. The setting sun bled across the sky, turning the landscape into a blood-red nightmare. We drove for what felt like an eternity, the silence broken only by the rumble of the Jeep and the occasional snap of a twig. The road twisted and turned, leading us deeper into the desolate landscape. The feeling of unease grew stronger with every mile, until it was a palpable weight pressing down on us. Then we saw the car. It was an old Ford Mustang, rusted and decaying, abandoned in the middle of the road. The windows were shattered, and the tires were flat. It looked like it had been there for years. "Great," Leo muttered. "Just great. Hopefully, we can drive around it." As Leo maneuvered the Jeep past the Mustang, I noticed something inside the car. A figure slumped in the driver's seat. "Stop the car!" I yelled. Leo slammed on the brakes. "What? What is it?" I pointed to the Mustang. "There's someone in there." We cautiously approached the car, peering through the broken windows. The figure in the driver's seat was a skeleton, still strapped into the seatbelt. Its bony fingers were gripping the steering wheel, and its skull was tilted back, as if it were staring up at the sky. Maya gasped and took a step back. Chloe, however, seemed strangely calm, her eyes fixed on the skeleton. "This is significant," she whispered. "This is a sign." "A sign of what?" Leo demanded, his voice trembling slightly. Chloe didn't answer. Instead, she reached into her bag and pulled out a small, intricately carved wooden box. She opened the box and sprinkled a handful of dried herbs onto the skeleton. "Chloe, what are you doing?" I asked, my voice rising in panic. Chloe ignored me. She closed her eyes and began to chant in a language I didn't understand. The air around us seemed to grow colder, and a low, guttural growl echoed through the desolate landscape. Suddenly, the skeleton's head snapped forward, its empty eye sockets fixed on Chloe. The growl intensified, and the air crackled with an unnatural energy. "Chloe, stop it!" I screamed, grabbing her arm. But it was too late. The skeleton's jaw dropped open. and from its throat came a sound that was neither human nor animal, but something in between. It was a sound filled with malice and rage, a sound that seemed to come from the very depths of hell itself. Leo, Maya, and I scrambled back, our hearts pounding in our chests. But Chloe stood her ground, her eyes still closed, her body trembling with the effort of her chant. The air grew thick with an energy that was almost tangible, a dark and sinister force that seemed to be building around us. Suddenly, the skeleton moved. Its bony fingers gripped the steering wheel tighter, and its skull turned towards us. The growling intensified, and the air was filled with a sound like the rustling of 1,000 dry leaves. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I could only watch in horror as the skeleton began to move, its bones creaking and cracking as it pulled itself from the driver's seat. It stood there, in the middle of the road, its empty eye sockets fixed on us. Chloe's chanting grew louder, more urgent. The air around us was charged with an energy that was almost unbearable, a dark and sinister force that seemed to be building towards something terrible. And then, without warning, the skeleton moved. It lunged towards us, its bony fingers outstretched, its mouth open in a silent scream. We turned and ran, our feet pounding against the cracked asphalt. The skeleton pursued us, its movements surprisingly swift for something made of bone. We could hear its growling, its creaking and cracking, as it followed us down the abandoned road. We didn't stop running until we reached the Jeep. Leo fumbled with the keys, his hands shaking so much he could barely get them into the ignition. The engine roared to life, and we tore out of there, leaving the skeleton behind. We drove in silence, the only sound the rumble of the Jeep's engine and the pounding of our hearts. The sun had set completely, and the landscape was bathed in the eerie glow of the moon. Eventually, we reached the main road. We didn't speak, didn't look at each other. We just stared straight ahead, our minds filled with the horror of what we had just experienced. It wasn't until we stopped for gas that we finally broke the silence. Leo turned to Chloe, his eyes filled with anger and disbelief. "What the hell was that?" he demanded. Chloe looked at him, her eyes wide and filled with fear. "I don't know," she whispered. "I've never seen anything like that before." Maya and I exchanged a glance. We both knew that whatever had happened back there, it wasn't something we could easily forget. We spent the rest of the night driving, putting as much distance between us and that abandoned road as possible. We didn't speak, didn't sing. We just drove, our minds filled with the horror of what we had experienced. As the sun began to rise, we pulled into a gas station. We were all exhausted, both physically and mentally. We stumbled out of the Jeep, our legs shaky, our eyes gritty with fatigue. Leo filled the tank, his movements automatic. Maya went to buy us all coffee, her hand still trembling slightly. And Chloe, she just stood there, staring off into the distance. I walked over to her, my footsteps heavy on the asphalt. "Chloe," I said, my voice soft. She turned to me, her eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean for that to happen." I nodded, my heart aching for her. I knew she hadn't meant for things to go so terribly wrong, but that didn't change the fact that they had. We got back in the Jeep and continued our journey. We didn't talk about what had happened, didn't try to make sense of it. We just drove, the horror of that night forever etched in our minds. As we reached the end of Route 66, I looked back. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the landscape, and for a moment, I thought I saw something. A figure, standing in the middle of the road, its bony fingers outstretched, its mouth open in a silent scream. I blinked, and it was gone. But the image remained, burned into my mind, a reminder of the horror we had experienced, the nightmare we had lived. We went our separate ways after that, each of us carrying the weight of that night. We didn't stay in touch, didn't try to keep the friendship alive. It was as if that night had created a divide between us, a chasm that couldn't be crossed. But every now and then, I think about that night. I think about the horror we experienced, the nightmare we lived. And I wonder if that road is still out there, still abandoned, still cursed. And I wonder if, somewhere out there, that skeleton is still standing, its bony fingers outstretched, its mouth open in a silent scream. A reminder of the horror that lives on Route 666.
Two stories. Two stretches of highway. One shared truth: some roads lead us to places far darker than the maps dare to show. In Jake's Place, we witnessed a moment of connection, a gentle brush with the paranormal that revealed the weight of forgotten lives. For Paul, the road didn't just carry freight, it carried memories, messages, and the voices of the lost. In the ghostly glow of a long-abandoned diner, he found purpose, becoming more than a trucker. He became a keeper of stories, a bridge between the living and the dead. His experience reminds us that sometimes, the past just needs someone to remember, someone to listen. And then there's the other path. The darker one. In A Growl from the Asphalt, curiosity led four friends down an old road best left buried. What started as adventure turned into a nightmare, one that clawed its way from legend into reality. Where Chloe's fascination with the occult cracked open something none of them could ever put back. Some stories, it seems, aren't meant to be told. Some roads don't want to be rediscovered. So what do these stories tell us? They remind us that America's highways don't just connect cities, they connect history, mystery, even tragedy. Every diner, every motel, every forgotten road sign might hold a fragment of a story waiting to be found, or a warning begging to be heeded. Whether it's the soft echo of a jukebox playing a final tune for a lost family, or a skeletal figure growling into the night, both stories whisper the same message. The road remembers. So the next time you're cruising down a quiet highway and see something odd in the distance, a flickering sign, an abandoned turnoff, or a shadow that doesn't quite belong, ask yourself, do I keep driving? Or do I stop and listen? But remember, not every story wants to be told. And not every silence is empty. Keep your eyes open, and maybe, keep the engine running. Hey, horror fans. If you enjoyed our chilling tales and want to keep the spine-tingling stories coming, don't forget to hit that like button. Your support keeps the darkness alive. Share this video with your friends, let's spread the fear together. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications, so you never miss a hair-raising moment. Join our community of thrill seekers and prepare for more eerie adventures. Thanks for watching, and remember, stay scared.